Evening everybody, and a warm welcome to you all, and a warm welcome to those attending and also our viewers watching live on the Council's YouTube channel, Hillingdon, London. This is a meeting of the Property, Highways and Transport Select Committee. My name is Councillor Keith Burrows and I'll be chairing this meeting. Details of the business to be considered today is shown on the agenda, copies of which are available in the room and also accessible on YouTube underneath the broadcast. Just some housekeeping, we're not expecting a fire drill, so if the fire alarm goes off, please follow officers to the fire exits and out of the building to the designated meeting points. For those in the room, please switch off any mobile devices or turn them to silent before the meeting starts. Also, for those watching via YouTube, so minded, you can complete one of our residents' feedback forms. These can be found in the information section under the YouTube video. These forms are intended to help us improve the way that we run our meetings. Before we start this evening, can you just highlight apologies for absence, please?
Thank you. Apologies received from Councillor Tuckwell with Councillor Smallwood substituting. Apologies also received from Councillor Davies with Councillor Gohill substituting.
Thank you. With those announcements, if we can go around the room, please, just for those at home so they know who is actually in the room this evening, starting with Councillor Smallwood.
I am Councillor Smallwood and I am substituting for Councillor Tuckwell.
Councillor Gohill substituting for Councillor Davies.
Steve Gunter, Fleet Manager.
Matthew Kelly, Director of Procurement and Commissioning.
Councillor Alagaraleg.
Councillor Kamalpreet Kaur.
Councillor Peter Money.
Anisha Teji, Democratic Services.
Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest in matters before us this evening? No? None? Okay, to receive the minutes of the previous meeting, I'll do my usual, I'll go page by page. If you've got any items you want correcting or added to, please let me know. Page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5. Those minutes agreed? Thank you. Moving on to just confirm that the items of business marked as Part 1 will be considered in public and items marked Part 2 will be considered in private. I can say that all items on our agenda this evening are Part 1, so we will be considered in public. I've been requested if we can take agenda item B first, which is the fleet programme, and I will hand straight over to Steve Gutner and Matthew Kelly, and then afterwards, if you've got any questions, please indicate at the end and we'll ask those questions. So over to you. Thank you.
Good evening all. Our report provides details around the composition of the council fleet, the key challenges within the fleet and the future decision making around the fleet replacement programme. We've provided a fleet composition table that highlights the breakdown of the fleet as it is of today. I won't go through each line, but I will just cover the actual totals. We run a fleet of 297 vehicles. 254 of those are owned, 43 are hired. We've got 289 of those are internal combustion engine, which are diesel powered. We've got 3 full electric pool cars, and we've got 5 hybrid pool cars. Fleet challenges. The main challenge for fleet relates to driver behaviour and avoidable fleet damage. Avoidable fleet damage is costing the council more than £800,000 per annum. Costs are incurred on all vehicles, but the majority, circa 80%, relate to waste and street cleansing operations. The 80% is broadly in line with expectations given the number, size and functions of those vehicles. The cost of fleet damage has been under review by fleet management for some time, and the reason for the increasing costs are wide and varied. I'll go through a couple of those areas that we're concentrating on. The data and management oversight. Historically, the data has not been available to provide sufficient management oversight and enable the correct decisions to be taken. This has improved significantly over the last 12 months with the purchase and installation of new tracking devices and improved reporting. Ownership. Vehicles and associated budgets are managed by the fleet team, although vehicles are used by operational service areas, thus creating a disconnect in ownership, especially relating to costs. Nature of the fleet. The nature of the council fleet and the range of vehicles being operated and the tasks being undertaken mean this is very difficult different from an average road fleet. Ours which undertake a day-in, day-out operation. Hillingdon vehicles operate in challenging operational environments where damage is more likely to be incurred. External factors. The cost of operating any vehicle continues to rise, and specifically costs related to insurance, repair and maintenance. This has inevitably fed through into the costs incurred by LBH for repairs of its own vehicles and those subject to insurance-related claims. Culture. The current job and finish approach to work scheduling in some teams within the council offers operational flexibility but can lead to a persistence to finish. This inevitably contributes to the increase in fleet damage, although to what extent is unknown. There are other aspects of culture, including the use of agency drivers with established support crews that lead to pressure on drivers and further contributes to the fleet damage. Just to explain that element, some of the new drivers that come in as agency drivers are influenced by some of the established crews. So they want, because of the start and finish arrangement, they want to get back in a speedily time, so they pressurize the poor new drivers who are struggling to understand the collection areas, and this has led to damage on our vehicles. A regular fleet forum comprising operational and senior management is now in place to help address the issues and drive down the costs being incurred. One of the outputs of this forum is a combined insurance damage report, which requires the operational teams to record actions taken for incidents costing more than £1,000. The forum ensures specific instances of damage are monitored, although it is not yet translating into demonstrable outcomes. The fleet team are also engaged with other boroughs with similar fleets and operating conditions to determine a benchmark of how Hillingdon's performance compares. So this is a new initiative. I've managed to get myself invited onto the ALTO group meetings, and part of the initiative is to benchmark across all of the boroughs, and it came as a welcoming venture, because most of the fleet managers I spoke to in the meeting in March were in the same position as we are. There is a lot of damage out there, and we try to determine where we stack up within our neighbours, if we want to call them that, and then jointly we'll try and find some good practices and share with our colleagues what we're doing to try and drive down the high cost. But we are not unique, but it's still a high cost that we need to be looking at to try and drive down in any way that we can. Driver behaviour is closely connected to fleet damage, although offers a broader perspective on how driver performance can impact on fleet costs. The new tracking devices offer a range of data including harsh braking, fast cornering, excessive acceleration, speed incidents, etc. The system takes all this data to produce what they call an EEDI, which is an Eco-Efficient Driver Index score for each of the drivers that is used to monitor overall performance and specifically used in regular discussions with the poor performing individuals. So every week the operational team, especially in the waste collection areas, will select the 3 lowest scoring drivers within that period, have them in, show them details from the trackers, and then work a plan of making improvements. And we've seen that work tremendously in improving that EEDI score rate. Where are we? The EEDI is a leading indicator of fuel consumption and wear and tear on vehicles. Inevitably, vehicles driven with the high EED score will have commensurately better fuel consumptions. With an annual fuel spend of £1 million, a 10% reduction can have a sizable budget benefit. And over the period that we have been monitoring the EEDI scores, we're showing the 10 to 12% improvements in fuel consumption. And bearing in mind, the bigger vehicles do use a lot of fuel. We don't even get 4 miles to the gallon with a refuge collection vehicle. And at £1, we're paying £1.18 bulk fuel. It does amount up. So looking at that 10 to 12%, already you're looking about £34,000 a year of possible savings just in fuel by improving the driver efficiencies. With a fleet of 297 vehicles and the associated costs of acquisition, maintenance, repair and operations, there's always a need to consider the utilization of the fleet. That is, are we using the vehicles in a way that maximizes its value? Much progress has been made on this over the past few years, with decisions taken to hire winter gritters for 6 months of the year rather than own outright. Equally, the refuge vehicles are now supplemented in the summer using hired vehicles for green waste collections. A review is also underway to review Green Space's winter fleet. On the basis there will be opportunities to reduce during the winter months. Good progress has been made on fleet utilization in the last 18 months, with 4 vehicles removed from the fleet, and we were working on utilizing the low utilized vehicles in the service areas into a pool arrangement, and we fleet allocate those vehicles to areas that require them instead of going out and hiring vehicles. Fleet replacement program. The council has a cyclical vehicle replacement program to ensure that the fleet maintains an optimum balance of cost and reliability. This involves replacement of vehicles on an average of 7 years. Now that's the baseline, but we do look at conditions of the vehicles, we look at mileages. We don't just go and replace vehicles because they get to a 7-year period. There are currently 90 frontline service vehicles which have reached the end of their serviceable life and are now subject to the daily ULEZ fees. All the vehicles are in their 9th year of operation. Reliability is falling and the maintenance costs are growing beyond what is economic to maintain. The need to hire temporary vehicles whilst repairs take place further exacerbate the cost pressures of old vehicles. While there is an agreement that replacement vehicles are required, LBH has for the first time a viable choice between electric and diesel replacements. In this phase of purchasing, the working recommendation is to replace 32 vehicles with electric equivalents and the balance with diesel. This decision is based on a number of factors, including location and availability of charging facilities for operatives, speed of charging infrastructure including grid capacity at the council facilities, payload, cost, range and maintenance. The acquisition of 32 vehicles will allow fleet and user teams to develop their operational understanding of how a greater number of EV vehicles could be operated and maintained in the future. It must be noted that major investment will be needed in electrical power supply to Hillingdon Road Depot to support future growth in electric vehicle fleet. In terms of other heavier and non-standard vehicles, the electric market is less well developed in terms of options. but the fleet team continue to test options when they become available. Over the past few months, this has included trials of a electric 26-ton refuse collection vehicle and a small sweeper, and I've got another trial starting next week on another small electric sweeper of a different manufacturer's supply. And we've also, which we left out of this report, we've tested a number of electric medium-sized vans. All the trials have concluded with positive results and will be factored into future considerations when the existing fleet vehicles need replacing. Thank you.
Do you want to add anything, Matthew?
Not at the minute, Chair. Sorry, no. I'll chip in with the questions as and when they follow. Thank you.
Questions? Councillor Court?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for this presentation. I just wanted to find out if we know how many of our own drivers do we have and how many agency drivers do we use? And also, when you mentioned the main challenge is the driver behavior, can we list some other challenges that you face as well, please?
Okay, the actual numbers I can't relate to, but it's around about 45% of the heavy-duty drivers are agency drivers. With regard to the behaviour challenges, is numerous. We've got issues where we've got some good mainstay drivers. Some of our drivers have been with us for 25 years, and we've got a good core. It's some of the younger ones that have come into the organisation where they tend to rush. But this program of monitoring the EEDI goes hand in hand with a training scheme that Dennis Eagle, our maintenance provider, as well as our refuse collection vehicle provider, have worked with our teams to show them where they could make improvements in their driving, harsh accelerating, cornering harshly, braking harshly, speeding, and the likes. What we've also invested in is units that assist the drivers in 29 of our refuge collection vehicles, because those are the ones that have got the tracking systems in. Now, these devices will warn the driver when there's an alert. So if he's speeding, it'll warn him while he's doing it. A buzzer will come on and a light will come on. It's the same with harsh braking. Then at the end of the day, it gives that driver his EEDI score. Now that information and data is stored in the main system as well. So the operational teams that manage those drivers use that as their guideline to have the discussions that I mentioned earlier, but the driver is aware of what he scored during that day. So we've got a bit of competition going on now for the guys that are not performing as well as they should have been, and some of the top drivers. Some of our top drivers are hitting 100% every week. Others that were sitting when we started, some we had around the 26%. Now those guys have moved up to, because our benchmark is 80%. They've moved up closer to that 80% mark. But there's still room for improvement in those, but there is the general sort of consensus that they are challenging each other. All right. Have I answered your question? Okay.
Councillor Gaelic, then I've got Councillor Gohill, then I've got Councillor Money.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Just got a question about those 26 tons wagons that you are trialling. What would be the average achievable mileage on them on full charge? And is it the only depot where they can be charged or anywhere else?
When it comes to the bigger vehicles, the charging becomes a little bit difficult because of the amount of current that is needed to charge a vehicle or battery to power up a big vehicle like that. So they would be charged at our depot at Hillingdon Road. At present, the way we did the demo is we got our electricians to fit a power unit supply. When the demo vehicle came, it came with its own charging unit. We just put the supply in. But when we go to put our own vehicles in, we will have to have fixed charging points. And they become a little bit more difficult to arrange. And our power units to Hillingdon Road will have to be upgraded. At present, we can only have charge points to cover 32 smaller vehicles. So that will be 8 22 kilowatt charging points, which we can split. Just to follow on that question, the charging period would be about 7 hours to fully charge a 26 tonner. The charge, when we used the vehicle, we went out and it came back with about 30% left in the charge. So we couldn't run a second day with it. We'd have to charge that 70% up overnight to be able to achieve the next runs. What we've also got to consider when it comes to the smaller vehicles, when they're looking at electric power, is a lot of the manufacturers are suggesting certain ranges, but they don't tell you what conditions that vehicle will operate under. And what we have noticed in the vans, talking to other users that have already got electric vehicles in place, that the range that is given is on a van with absolutely nothing in it. There's no weather conditions that are taken into place. So when you put the racking, like our repairs vehicles, you put racking in it, so there's weight in that. You load it with all the equipment that they need to go and do their jobs, there's weight in that. So the payload has a big impact on the range of the vehicle. The other thing is in cold weather, there's another draw because you'll have heaters on, you'll have lights on, and the likes. So where they are quoting maybe 165 miles for a van, realistically, you might only get 98 or 100 miles. So in our operation, we'd have to charge those vehicles every second day. If you could get the full 165 miles range, you'd only have to charge them every third or fourth day. So this is why you've got to link that in to our charging infrastructure requirements.
Can I just follow up on that one? I mean, the grid, the capacity issue in the grid is a kind of a much wider problem than just Hillingdon, obviously, and so that's going to need addressing. 200 in theory. In 4 or 5 years, we should be replacing all the fleet. By the time another 7 years goes, circa, we will have replaced all the fleet, and to have that many charging stations is kind of going to take kind of a lot of cost to set that up as well. So, I think that's partly the reason why, when we're looking at the current van fleet of circa 90 frontline vehicles that we've got, we're looking at 32 electric. It just allows us to better understand some of those challenges that we're going to face as we progress. We've got drivers who take vehicles home, and how do we manage that? Do we start putting charging facilities into people's houses? What if they don't have a drive that they're parking their vehicle on, and they actually don't live in Hillingdon, so they're relying on other boroughs' charging facilities? There's a myriad of issues there that we've just got to continue to learn about, rather than this is about let's stick an electric vehicle on the road. There's lots for us to do there.
Councillor Gohill.
Thank you, Chair. I was quite concerned to see it's such a high number for the vehicle damage repair. Do we know if it's within that number? Is that just damage caused by our drivers, or is it does it include drivers being hit by other people or civilians, etc.?
All right, that is the combined damage cost. The cost basically is 50-50, because we record direct damage to our vehicles, and then there is the insurance element of it, third-party claims against us if our vehicle is knocked a wall down or the likes. So that is the combined figure. So the direct damage to our vehicles is around about 460 something £1,000 at present, and the remainder is made up of insurance.
I have a follow-up, if that's okay. Does that allow? Thanks, Chair. My follow-up is, do the vehicles have dash cams in them? Just something to aid the EEDIs?
Right, not at present. We have got cameras in our vehicles, but that is for our manoeuvring requirements. We are working with Nicola Herbert, the head of waste, with regard to putting cameras into the vehicles, which will be 360 cameras, degree cameras. So I don't know where she is with that project, but I've provided her with a lot of detail around costs and, the likes and what products are available. But yes, it's in discussions with other operations like our own, it does help tremendously when we are challenging or being challenged by some of the third-party claimants. So yes, it is something we're working on, but it hasn't happened as yet.
Councillor Money.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the presentation. Just a couple of points from me, a question as well. The hiring of temporary vehicles, because we've got 90 frontline service vehicles that are at the end of their life. What's the cost of that? What's the cost implication?
Well, it's a mix of. It's a mix of hires. Our hire charges or costs are made up of vehicles that we have to have because of the aged vehicles. We've also got a fair amount of money being spent on hired vehicles for big machines that we use for moving the waste around. We're at the final stage of replacing those units, so that will make a savings there. But there is a big chunk of money that we are spending in supporting the aged fleet. But there is also an element where we've got, especially in the repairs department, their requirements have expanded, so their core fleet we've had to support, or the increase in the core fleet we've had to support with hired vehicles. When we purchase the vehicles within the program, it will take those hired vehicles out of the equation. So there's roughly 3 elements of hired vehicles that we are presently using to support our existing fleet.
Thank you. Just a follow-up, please. Where's it gone? The electric vehicles that we currently have, do you think the technology is up for it with the refuse vehicles, the 26-tonners? We've also got the challenges of the electrical power supply to the Harlington Road depot, but also the grid issue, because it is a national issue. It's not just a Hillingdon-wide or London-wide issue. Do you think electric vehicles is the right way to go?
I'm not sure. I mean, part of the reason we're making sure we take the right decision on the repairs vehicles, the market's there now. There's lots of different options, so we need to work out how that will work for us. When we start talking about those larger vehicles, we'll have to do an appropriate amount of due diligence. The cost difference between a diesel refuse collection vehicle and a electric is huge, so we've got to make sure it's the right one. So, and Steve said we've tested some of those. We've tested them and they kind of work. Yeah. Obviously, they're coming back with 30% left in a battery. That doesn't give you huge margin of error. Imagine when those vehicles are 5 years, 6 years old. Are we still going to get that 30% and in cold weather and a high payload? So we really need to, Hillingdon are clearly not a first mover on this. There are other authorities who have got them out there. It'd be really interesting to learn about their experience. And as these vehicles come up as part of the fleet replacement programme, we'll be going out and having those conversations with users to understand is it the right decision for us?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm all for EV vehicles, but not if they don't work when we need them to work.
Councillor Smallwood, and I'll bring in Councillor Gowden.
Thanks, Chair. 2 questions. I'll go with the first one. what is the cost of the Mayor of London's ULEZ charge to the council on our current fleet?
So around about £20,000 a month.
That's a lot of money. I mean, I know some people think that ULEZ doesn't matter, but it does, and that's a heck of a lot of money. My next one is actually around the future, and I like thinking about the future because I think it's always a positive thing to do. And I wanted to talk about hydrogen.
Yep.
And what the council's looking at hydrogen. I actually believe that EVs will be here in our lifetime for quite a short space of time, because actually if you look at hydrogen, it's an awful lot greener, it's an awful lot lighter, and it's the biggest problem at the moment is it's not as durable, because you don't really want it, exploding is the biggest problem you want at the moment. How do we keep an eye on these sort of future things? Because actually I think whilst EV is important, 44 is doing it, it could be in the terms of petrol and diesel, it could be quite a short-term thing as we move towards things like hydrogen, which we are already doing in other parts of the world.
In answer to that, we'd keep a very close eye, well, I certainly do, a very close eye to the market. I chat with a lot of suppliers, especially the hire companies, because they are looking at a lot of different options. Hydrogen is basically just a different power source to an internal combustion engine. And the refueling is very quick, but as you alluded to, it's the cost of the actual product and the storage of that product is a little prohibitive at this place. The other thing is we haven't progressed the development of hydrogen as quickly as Europe has done and other parts of the world. But the emphasis seems to be shifting in the direction, more into that direction now. So it is going to be interesting to see where it's going to end. The issue, I sat on a conference with, it was actually Terberg, and Terberg had a hydrogen-powered vehicle through Mercedes-Benz, a Econo. And as we went through the presentation, everything, it looked really good. I thought, this is really exciting stuff. And then at the end of the day, I said, okay, our duty cycle is X, Y, Z. I said, how much would a vehicle be? Bearing in mind a diesel vehicle we can get for £198,000 now, their equivalent to do the same job for us would be £720,000. So it just threw everything out, but they kept that very quiet right to the end. But as things move on and production changes and development continues, I think personally that would be the better route, because it doesn't make that huge change from where we are now. There is also talk that they can convert diesel engines to have a different power unit. So it's just a matter of a bolt-on kit that will allow existing vehicles that you've purchased, provided they are in a good use. So if we purchased a diesel powered vehicles that are 2 or 3 years old, we could actually get them transferred to the hydrogen power unit, provided that the infrastructure around that was in place and safe, and the cost of the fuel, if you want to class it as that, was sufficient for us to get the savings. But yes, there's going to be a good run between electric and hydrogen. But I would rather, I'm the old school, I like an internal combustion engine. So electric has got a lot of issues around the battery. And also, you've got to take into account the extra weight in an electric vehicle. Payloads are affected. If they're not affected, then the plating of an electric vehicle is up from about 26, which is normally our capacity on a refuse collection vehicle, to 27,500 kgs. So, that's extra weight on the roads, that's extra weight on the tires, this extra weight through the componentry of the vehicle. So there's a lot of positives and there's a lot of negatives with electric powered units, whereas other sources like hydrogen, it's very similar to what we've got already. It's just the way we power it up.
Councillor Gerlich.
Thank you, Chair. So my question actually related to modifications of replacing the engine, gearbox, and the fuel box. So you looked at the possibilities of that, because I know that the expense is 50% of what you'd pay for the new vehicle. And I think in Sheffield we are trying out some of those 26 tonners, which were, I think, modified by some Holland-based company.
Yes, there are a number of companies that are doing the exchange now around electrification, but the price is still close to the 400,000 mark. So you've got a relatively, if you're going to use a vehicle in its diesel form for its life, 7 years, a lot of people are saying that you use that same chassis and you convert it to electric vehicle. They do refurb the cabs, so you got a relatively new cab, but you've still got a 7-year-old chassis that you've put £300,000 worth of electrical equipment into it. Is it viable? I don't know at this stage. Because you still got all the other charging challenges as you would have on a new vehicle. So by the time that vehicle, if you run it out another 7 years, the chassis itself would be 14, 15 years old. How is that going to pan out in our conditions? So there's pros and cons to it. But yes, we've explored all those. And I think Dennis Eagle were quoting about £360,000 for a conversion on an old vehicle. So it's still very high.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Core.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to know, what do you think would work out better than doing away with old fleet that needs a lot of maintenance or hiring vehicles? And the second question, if I may, is there anything that a cash-strapped council like us do to help you take on some of your challenges? Thank you.
Right, we've done the exercise on hiring in vehicles. There's two issues. It's a lot more expensive to hire in vehicles than our present arrangement where we purchase vehicles and we maintain them through our on-site maintenance provider. When they get to the end of life, our own vehicles have got an asset value. A hired vehicle, when you get to the end of the life, you go and throw a couple of £1,000 in return damage costs against them. So there's those sort of options. The other thing is, if we're hiring vehicles, that comes out of our revenue budget. If we're purchasing vehicles, it comes out of our capital budget where we can spread the financial pressures against it.
Thank you. I just want to make a comment that I don't think cash strap should really be noted, especially if we have sufficient balances we heard at last council meeting. So I don't think that's quite a fair comment. But thank you for the answer. Any other questions? No? Okay. Thank you to the pair of you for coming. Very detailed presentation. It's very difficult to maintain the fleet, especially for a borough this size, which is so huge when you look at it on the map. And the way those guys drive those vehicles, I see them come down my road sometimes in the morning, reversing down the road rather than me. Especially when they go past my car, I'm thinking, please. No, they're very good. So yeah, it's a changing world. We know that, and to keep any fleet of the size that you've got going is always a headache. But you do it very well. So thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on. Agenda item 5, review into the Council's Road Safety Initiative and activities around the borough's schools. So this is our topic that we've looked at. Now, there are some recommendations that have already been put forward. I'm sure you've seen those. I'll quickly run through them. Promote projects and events throughout the year through social media, highlighting youth travel ambassador programs and the Dragon's Den event. 2, explore ways on how communications can be better developed with schools that do not engage. This may include introducing working groups amongst schools and encouraging more councillors to highlight the benefits of working with the transport team. Recommendation 3, with improvement in technology and CCTV cameras, committee recommends that Cabinet reviews the current cameras used outside schools and looks at improving the cameras and ongoing programme of works to ensure pupils and public and remain safe outside schools where there are restricted parking areas, and or consider other enforcement options. Recommendation 4, Cabinet instruct officers to continue making relevant applications to Transport for London for funding to continue improving road safety across the borough, ensuring the roads across Hillingdon are safe for all users. 5, Cabinet instruct parking enforcement officers to attend the schools on a reasonable rotational basis. And there was one about Guru Nanak, which officers have already answered, so it's no longer a recommendation because there is a shared cycle path on the opposite side of the road. So that's fine. I know that Councillor Keith has put some forward, and we will go through these. The first recommendation that Councillor Keith has suggested is recommended that all roads outside schools to have a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit. I've looked at that, and I've spoken to Anisha earlier that we need to just slightly change that, because it would be impossible to put 20 mile an hour outside every single school because of some of the locations of the schools. So we can still put it forward, but we need to change the recommendation to go along the lines that recommend officers investigate those schools that could benefit from the 20 mile an hour speed limit where appropriate. Okay, so it's still there, but just slightly different wording. The one with zebra crossings, that's almost impossible, and I'll explain why. When I was Cabinet member and I used to get requests for zebra crossings, there's so much you have to go through to get a zebra crossing in. There has to be sight lines, clear sight lines for a certain length of time, and they're audited. It's not just by us. They have to be audited before we can actually install them. So it would be almost impossible to say that all schools have zebra crossings nearby to help safe crossing the children. Again, I think it's going to have to be a slight change on wording. Although I would like to know first how many schools have petitioned us for zebra crossings, maybe. And then that would gauge, or how many parents from schools have petitioned us. Is there a need that every school needs them? Or we just change the wording to state that the school travel team work with schools to ensure safer crossing routes near schools without zebra crossings, and investigate the possibility of a zebra crossing if required, something like that. So you're still leaving it in there, but we've just changed the wording slightly so that school travel work with the schools to see what their needs are. The road signage, I think that's already part and parcel of it, because there is adequate road signage near schools. Certainly I haven't seen a school yet that hasn't. I know they're repainting, repositioning, resizing where needed. So I'm not sure on that one. Any other? Councillor Smallwood.
Chair, I think this is an important point. But I don't know about you. I mean, I don't always get every road I want resurfaced or every bit of painting done at the moment I want it, but whenever I've asked for it outside of school, it's been done pretty quickly. So maybe it could just say something, all right, a continued priority for areas around schools, for these as and when they need replacing. Because I think it's important that it takes priority But I found whenever I've asked for things around schools, a priority's been given for the exact reasons I think that this bullet point tries to deliver.
Anisha's just pointed out we could add it to recommendation 4, where we're saying about Transport for London asking for monies, etc., to ensure Hillingdon roads are safe. We could add it here saying, including the checking of signage, road markings and sizing outside schools to ensure they're adequate. Something along those lines, yeah? Okay, so we'll put that in on that one. Raising the pavements and installing bollards. Now, when I read this, I almost went into a hot sweat, because the number of times I remember saying that I was going to put bollards somewhere and somebody thought it should be used for other uses, because they don't like them. I know they want us to solve the issue, the residents want us to solve the issue. Basically what they want us to do is make every school free from cars. They don't want cars anywhere near a school. We'd all like that, but it's impossible. And if we were going to consider raising pavements, installing bollards, you would then get into the realms of consultations and stuff like that with residents. So although I know it's a heartfelt recommendation, I don't think it's possible. Councillor Cole.
Sorry, Chair. It came as a thought because there were people who were petitioning to do something around Wood and Green roads where people would mount the pavements. And this was one of the suggestions that the design team had said, what would we prefer? Were we in favour of raising, or were we in favour of bollards and everything? So this is where it has come from. But of course, everything has its cost implications, and you said not everybody wants it. They want some solution, but this probably might not be what everybody wants.
Okay, let's reword it slightly then. So we could put forward as a recommendation, the committee...
Sorry, Chair, could we include something in there to say with residents' consent?
Yeah. I'm coming right along it, yeah. The committee recommends where the raising of payments or installing bollards to prevent pavement parking is suggested. This entails consultation with those residents affected by such actions. Yeah? So it's still there, but it involves the residents. Issue advisory for parents through schools at the start of each year about safe drop-off pickup. From what I remember, each school that came in, they said that they do that at the beginning. They put it in their newsletter as well already. So the school travel team are already doing that with schools.
Yes, they were. And one of when we said what could council do better, they said they could tell us how we can probably talk to parents about it, and if council could give them some guidance.
But I thought the school travel team were already doing that. It was towards the initial
first witness session, I think, with the school's travel team. One of the ladies did mention that when I said, what could councils do for you?
Yeah.
They did say if the council could give us some guidance about how to deal with parents on this.
Okay, right, okay. So we can rewrite this.
Chair, It's just a suggestion.
Yeah.
We have a great tool in Hillingdon People that goes to every household. Is that something we could incorporate into that?
Into the recommendation. Yeah. So the committee recommends school travel team work with schools to provide advisory for parents, and this can also be highlighted as an article within Hillingdon People at the start of the academic year. Yeah? Happy? Okay, right, last one. Recognise schools through a certificate from council for road safety initiatives. I know that school travel do give out certificates. They give it to the road safety teams that have done different bits within the schools. They go into schools, they give the schools certificates and recognition. And also, we do the Dragon's Den and everything every year, which is, hold on, it's one of these, which is on this recommendation. I think this covers your recommendation. Promote projects and events throughout the year through social media, highlighting the Youth Travel Ambassador Programme and the Dragon's Den event. So I think that incorporates that, really, because that is plaudits in that, because that's what they do.
Yes, Chair, but if we could just, when we publicly do this, we could just, like pat on the back of the schools are doing really well, so that. Yeah, this is what this is saying. Coming from the council. Promote projects and events throughout the year through social media, highlighting the Youth Travel Ambassador Programmes and Dragon's Den event. So anything that's done within the schools, we use our social media as well as other events and projects that go throughout the whole year, not just specific times. Cheers, thank you. Okay. Those alterations, we're happy to incorporate that within there. Hopefully, Anisha got it all down. Looks like she did. Now, this report will be coming to us when?
Thanks, Chair. So, I was going to ask if the committee would consider delegating authority to Democratic Services to finalise the recommendations with the Chair and Labour Lead, and then start commencing the final report, drafting the final report.
I'm happy with that. Councillor Mann, are you happy with that?
Yeah, happy with that.
Okay. Committee, happy with that? Okay. We're good. Thank you very much. So moving on to item 7 now, which is Cabinet Forward Plan. I've been through this. There's a lot that's in part 3. I just want to pick up on something. I think Councillor Call, did you say about the school capital programme update? Okay. Given active project time frames to be able to give a more meaningful update on the Meadow School project, as well as a fuller update on the proposed SEN free school, now that the DfE has just announced who will be running it, this has been deferred to May Cabinet, so there's no opportunity for members to see this report as yet. Okay, but it's still in the pipeline and it's still on the highlight for us to see. So moving on to the forward plan, is there anything anybody wants to comment on or feel that we should see? Considering most of ours at first are in. Obviously, when it comes to the LIP annual spending submission, we get that anyway. So we will be getting that. So it doesn't matter. School capital programme update, we've been told we're going to have that. Apart from that, I don't think there's anything else on there unless somebody has burning desire on any of the reports. We happy with what's on there at the moment? Okay, agree. Moving on to our work programme. So, our next scheduled meeting is for the 6th of June, where we will have the draft report from our road safety. We've also got, well, we've just had the electric vehicle infrastructure strategy update. We've got the building safety strategy. And that would be it, because obviously our draft report will be taking up most of that meeting, and it will be the first one of the new committee. So, with that said, we happy to accept the going forward work programme? Okay, agreed? Thank you all. Thank you, Councillor Smallwood and Councillor Gohill, for substituting this evening. And with that, I call the meeting to a close. Thank you.